Okay, we've got ourselves a clock. Let's see if we get a preview video. There we go. I hit mute. Otherwise we'll get an echo. We got that. Okay, I think everything is mostly groovy. Why is this happening? My chat screen's broken. Why is it? Okay, we'll try that again. There we go. That's much better. Oh, Firefox, you so crazy. Alright, so let's see here. We got you, we got that's good. We got people in the house. Things are going relatively well. These things are relative. We've got a little bit of a Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom going on outside the dining room window. You just missed it. There were chipmunks yelling at each other. I think a bird was involved. Maggie, one of our chunkier cats, was very, very interested, but now she's become less interested because it seems the party is over. Just to let you know up front, I am suffering from a cold, so this is why I sound like this. There will probably be other less pleasant noises, and I will try to shield you from them by muting the microphone, turning off the thing so I can wipe at my nose. I don't know that this is con crud because I got back from Nova a week ago, so that was on Sunday, and then I didn't really start feeling the effects of this until late Thursday night, technically probably Friday. But yesterday was a lost day because I was just pretty much on the couch and I just ache and everything. I'm still achy today and possibly a bit breaky as well. But my nose is starting to dry up a little bit. A little bit. Anyway, enough about that. I just wanted to give you some warning. Good morning from the Pocket Dimension, says JP Got Rockets. We've got Scotland, we've got Ireland, we've got Poland, we've got... Redvin says, just want to say thank you for your tips at Nova. Well, you're welcome. Ogden, Utah. Let's see. Justin Herrick says, good morning. It was great seeing you at Nova. Had your class and was running the terrain booth. Well, excellent. Hello from Denmark, Belgium, Stratford, Connecticut. Radio Free Hammer Hall asks Concrud? Maybe. Like I said, seems like an awfully long time between the convention and Concrud. I mean, I guess maybe some Concrud got on something, which I then rubbed on my face on Wednesday night. I don't think that happened, though. The Animaster says that the box art for Aeronautica Imperialis doesn't do the models justice. There's a guy who works my local GW stores who paints them amazing. The ones that I saw at Nova were quite cool. I have the box. They sent it to me, but I haven't built them yet. But yeah. Good morning from Wyoming. JP Gotrocket says, is it cold or allergies? See, just before Gen Con, I thought I had the world's shortest cold. That might have been allergies, because this is also ache. Like, normally when I have allergies, then just my nose runs and whatnot, and I sneeze a lot and whatever. This is also, like, I ache. So that's why I think it's more of a cold, really. Birds and Chipmunks, you say? Sounds like a Disney movie, says VJ Moore. Well, it was a bit of a Disney movie out there, yeah. It seems to have... I think the cops came, so it's fine now. I mean, the animal cops. I'm not sure what the animal cops are, but... Nathaniel says, colds have an incubation time of up to 14 days. Well, then it very well possibly could be Nova Concrud. Good morning from Michigan. Vince evidently also caught the Concrud, according to Matthew Hipsher. Yeah, I mean, you shake a lot of hands, you know. Got another from Poland, South Carolina, Finland, Uperland, Costa Rica, Finland, Newfoundland. Morning from Los Angeles. Can't believe I'm awake for one of these. Well, yeah, it is a little early over there, I'll bet. Morning from, let's see here. What else? Bourbon will clear up that Concrud. Well, yeah, probably. To be fair, when I was sick the last time, I was going to also then see, like, a band, and I went to my local bar to see this band, the Reptile Palace, where, if you were at TMX, we went and saw several bands, including Meat Jelly. And I had 2 shots of blackberry brandy, which in Wisconsin is a cure for nearly anything, but specifically for the cold. So, you know, Maybe that's why it was so short. I don't know. I don't think we have any blackberry brandy here. But yeah, I'm not a doctor, but evidently blackberry brandy cures the common cold. Just saying. Um, has anyone has a tip on how to migrate white spirit dissolving acrylic gloss varnish when washing with oil paints? No, not migrate. Mitigate. That's a better word. Anyone have a tip on how to mitigate white spirit dissolving acrylic gloss varnish? White spirit dissolving acrylic when you're washing with oil paints. No. Well, I don't, at least. Someone else in the chat might, but that I've not done any of those things. I mean, I've used acrylic gloss before for I haven't used them for oil paints, but I've used them for other things, like just to seal and to wash, that kind of stuff for washes, but never for oil paints, so I don't know. Radio Free Hammer Hall says, "Was great to meet you at Nova. You and Vince dancing was the highlight of the convention for me." Yes, there was a... When was that? I want to say it was probably Saturday. Saturday was the worst. Well, not worst. I mean, it was fun. We had a good time. I'm just going to dab at my nose here real quick. We had a good time, but it was... that was the night that I could have decided to not have the last 2 beers, and I would have been a lot better off. But you live and you learn, I guess. So there's that. Mark F. says, "Good morning from the Motor City. Thank you for Sunday morning hobby time. So much more fun." Well, you're welcome. James says, "Definitely Con Crud, the delayed kind. I got it too." Well, there could have been just some sort of disease vector walking around at Nova. Maybe that's part of it. Jack says, "I just finished assembling the new Kill Team box set. The Tau models were a pain to put together." Tau models have always been a pain to put together. There's, like, the normal Fire Warriors, there's just way too many parts in a normal Fire Warrior. It's strange. Hernan says, "Hi from Shanghai, China." Nice. Emily says that Wisconsin Cure is, of course, liquor. Well, yes, that's... I mean, is blackberry brandy really liquor? Yeah, I guess technically it is. I know. It's my wife says it is. Doesn't taste like liquor. Was thinking of using contrast paints on my planes, but I'm thinking maybe not, because contrast would work better for models that stand up rather than out. Oh, because of the weight, because it wouldn't flow. Yeah, I could see that a little bit. The other thing about contrast paints is that they don't work great on vehicles, and even though they're very small vehicles, it's still vehicles. Like, they don't have huge flat parts. Contrast paint does not work very well at all on a huge flat parts. But if you use it on smaller flat parts, maybe. I would probably just use normal paints in those situations, honestly. Hi from Norway. Kent, UK. Dan says, "Been endlessly painting Warcry stuff. The models are so good." Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into that myself now. I was a little cool on it at first, although I thought that the terrain was amazing and the models were great. But I'm getting a little bit more interested. I did receive the new book from Games Workshop. They sent it to me, but it did not show up until Friday, and it showed up at work, and I was home on Friday, so I didn't get it. And so I couldn't make a video about it, but I'm going to go... Thing is, if I'm going to get it on Friday, and then the earliest I can make a video about it is on Saturday morning, well, then I got to make that video on Friday, which means I'm going to get it on Friday, try to digest the whole thing, and then make a video about it on Saturday. I just can't do that. So, at some point going forward, I will sit down and chew on it. Not literally, but I will chew on it and try to figure it out, and then make a video about the new expansion book. I'm a little... I was surprised it came so quickly, but I think that there's reasons. I find it very interesting that people, including myself, are comparing Warcry to Kill Team. And like, well, that's not how they did it in Kill Team. Well, no. It is a different game. Even though it's kind of the same form factor and it seems kind of like the same type of game, it is a different animal altogether. And so, that's why they're doing things differently with it, I think. Mr. Mendeleev says, "Hey, everyone, just finished building my Gloomspite Gets Warcry band." Cool. Hello from Calgary. I picked up the AI Marauder Destroyer box, or is it Al Marauder? And I've only assembled one of them so far. Nice model. I'm not familiar with that. I'm sorry. Matt Sears, moderator Matt, is in the house, so that's good to hear. Hope he's feeling good. Let's see here. King Bread says, I found contrast far worse on smooth surfaces than regular paint and causes more time wasted. Yeah, it's not. Contrast paints work great on organic looking stuff, things that are bumpy, lizards and bloodletters and things like that, skeletons, that kind of jazz. But like on vehicles is not good, and frankly, even on Space Marines, I don't particularly like it that much. I think maybe some of the colors would work well on Space Marines, but I haven't had great luck so far with the testing that I've done. I'll be making a video about contrasts soon. Again, one of those deals where I didn't want to just immediately jump in and make a video like as soon as they came out because I didn't have any time to test them, really. Not only did I not have time to test them, but I also just didn't have time because I was traveling a lot in June, so there's that too. But yeah. VJ Morph says that Warcry is such a great system. Been watching a bunch of bat reps. AOS factions, though, not interested in the Chaos Warbands. Yeah, I really kind of want to do Night Haunts for Warcry. I do like the 2 warbands that came in the box, at least visually. I like them, but I don't. Just dab it here a bit. Sorry. But I don't particularly like the. Well, I like the 2 that came in the box. Some of the other ones I'm not a big fan of. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying they're not to my liking, visually. What else? Jesse Daniel says, "Morning from Milwaukee. Good to see you there." VJ Morph says, "I'm doing Gits and Warcry as well." Evidently, Gits are very strong in Warcry, so according to King Bread. That's interesting. Darren says, "It's funny you mentioned contrast paints don't work on Space Marines when they showed us how to use it on Space Marines with it saving a step." Yeah, I mean, but Space Marines have got a lot of smoothness going on. I mean, there's a lot of panels and stuff like that. And I will be perfectly honest, so far, one of my favorite applications of using contrast paints is using the Apothecary White contrast on Stormtroopers. And Stormtroopers are just basically skinnier Space Marines. I mean, there's... In the fluff, there's a lot of difference, obviously. But, they are still... a lot of flatter panels and smooth areas and stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, maybe I should try painting a Space Marine and using the same process that I paint Stormtroopers, which is to say, put the stuff on there, let it all completely dry, and then go back and dry brush. Maybe I'd be a little happier with it. But now, admittedly, also the first Space Marine that I painted was with the Ultramarine Blue contrast paint, and that stuff doesn't work. Just straight up does not do what contrast paint's supposed to do. At least my bottle doesn't. And every person I've talked to who's used it has been like, yeah, that's not a good color. That doesn't work out well. Like, it doesn't seem to get any darker in the lower areas, and it doesn't get any lighter in the raised areas. It's just the same very dark blue everywhere, and not great. So that's my personal thing. But like a lot of the browns and the greens and some of the reds are really amazing. It would be interesting to try to paint a Blood Angel real quickly with the Blood Angel red color and see how it works out. But I do feel like I would end up having to put the Blood Angel red on there, completely let it dry, go back and do some dry brush and highlighting just to kind of raise up some of the raised parts even more, and then maybe start doing the detailing. It might work, but I don't know. Like I said, I haven't had great luck with it on Space Marines. I mean, it makes sense that they're going to show it to you on Space Marines because Space Marines is their biggest seller. If they made a paint that were like, well, it doesn't work at all on Space Marines, that would be problematic. At least I think so. But it does, I mean, it's good stuff. Like I said, I've been using the white and the black. I love most of the browns. I've been using even the Wildwood brown, which I've talked to a couple people and said they don't like it because it's so dark. But it works awesome if you are trying to paint like desert style, not stormtroopers, but scout troopers. Like if I want their plates and everything to be kind of tan instead of white, and then that undersuit, that unitard that they wear, if I want that to be dark brown instead of black, yeah, that's what I've used it for a ton. Let's see here. The Animaster says, I wish I could have seen those planes at Nova, though, because there isn't much in terms of paint references online for the new... AI being... okay, gotcha. Yeah, Adeptus, or whatever the heck it's called. Aeronautica Imperialis. I'm never going to get that name right. Mostly from the older Forge World line. See, that's the issue sometimes about them going through and changing all the names to be that kind of faux... that faux... Latin, is that it's in a lot of situations it's very difficult to try to remember. Like, I'm never going to call it Sisters of Battle the Sororitas, whatever the heck they're called. It's just not going to happen. So, yeah, I don't know. Let's see here. Adron says, with contrast on Marines, you really have to practice application. Personally found smoother, thin layers works okay. See, they always say never to do it in multiple layers. That's interesting, too. Like, if you did one layer, but they always say put it on thicker. So, interesting. Let's see. JP Got Rocket says, painting up some more stuff for Ral Partha. Commissions are fun, but they do interrupt my personal products. Yes, so does being sick as well. Like I said, yesterday, basically a lost day. I kind of wanted to do a bunch of stuff yesterday in the basement, work on some things, and instead I laid on the couch and watched terrible movies and did not feel well. I saw this movie on Netflix with Ben Affleck and Oscar Isaac Oscar, one of the two. The dude from Sons of Anarchy, Charlie Hunnam? Anyway. It was not great. I didn't like it. I felt almost as if they made it and then Hollywood studios were like, no, I don't think so. And then it ended up on Netflix. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know much about it, but it wasn't to my liking. I mean, it was well done, it wasn't like poorly edited or poorly shot or anything like that. Actually, there was quite a bit. The cinematography wasn't bad, but just the story, I was like, wasn't my liking. Let's see here. I did my Blood Angels in contrast paints, says Modest Almighty. They worked out great, but I like a worn look to my Marines. They're my little mud angels. Yeah, and I think that would be the case, frankly. Like, you'd end up having to do it that way and be okay with the fact that they would look a little grungy. Like, I don't think you could try to really paint a super clean Space Marine in contrast paints. Now, I have seen some pretty good ones, specifically like Imperial Fists using the like Iand and yellow color or whatever I think it is. But in looking at those pictures kind of close up, I do feel that this was not just like slop on one quick coat and then start painting details. I do think that there was, at least in the image that I saw, that I was like, wow, that was done with contrast. I do feel there was a lot of cleanup. So, there's that too. King Breads has just finished the Splintered Fang warband, the Snake Boys, and I just started putting together the Corvus Cabal, Bird Boys. The Corvus models are gorgeous, but difficult to assemble. Yeah, of the 6 different Chaos Warbands for Warcry, the 2 that come in the starter box are the ones that I like best. Third place is Corvus Cabal, aka Bird Boys, but I don't know if I'm going to end up getting them. Maybe. The thing is, like I said, I also want to do a Stormcast one and also Night Haunt. So at that point, I may not need Bird Boys. Scott says, I'm painting my white scars with contrast. Yeah, like, you can do it. I mean, like I said, I've been painting my Space Marines. I painted four squads of Space Marines with the white contrast. The Apothecary white. And it works out great. You prime them white, and then you slop it on. And then once it's totally dry, you go back with the big makeup brush and you dry brush white over everything, so you get like the top of the head, it goes back to white, tops of the shoulders, any of the big flat parts go back to white, but then all the crevices in the armor and stuff like that, they go to this light gray, which makes a great kind of shadow, but it's not too dark and doesn't look weird. And then you just do the unitard or whatever in Black Templar, which is another contrast color, and you just paint up all the parts where you can see it. And you do the eyes and the weird headband, and you paint the gun the same Black Templar color, and then I paint the base, and then it's black around the rim, and you're done. I mean, it's really quick and simple. But you do have to do that step where you clean it up by dry brushing with white, otherwise it's going to look like they're gray Space Marines, or Stormtroopers. It's just the way it works. Adeptus Sororitas. There you go. Now I've done it. Starla asks, any tips on preventing washes from making the mini look muddy? I keep losing all the detail after using a wash. I mean, it depends on the wash, I guess. GW washes, I find, work quite well and have a tendency, they will darken a model a bit. That's the trick. They will darken a model. Now, if you're using secret weapon washes, there's your problem. They're not bad. They're great. They're just not washes. They are technically glazes. And glazes are designed to modify the color of the big flat areas as well as get into the crevices. But they are technically not washes. There's a long story about why he called them washes instead of glazes, but they are glazes. They're awesome if you prime a model black and then dust it above from white, known as the zenithal highlighting, and then paint all the stuff that you want with glazes, and then it makes it look like you know how to blend. And it's awesome, and it's super fast, and it's great. So I love the secret weapon washes for that. But if you use them thinking it's like a GW wash, you're not going to be happy. So just that initially. But if you're going to use GW washes, there's something to be said also for trying to just get the washes in just the areas you need it, as opposed to, it's not like a contrast paint where you're supposed to slop it on everywhere. I frequently with washes will put them in the areas kind of where I think they need them and not get them everywhere, because they will darken down the model a bit. So that's something. JP Got Rocket says, I just bought some WizKids Nulzer's Giant Eagles, and I'm thinking of using contrast paints on them. Anyone have any suggestions for which colors to use? Well, I mean, it depends on what color eagle you want, I guess. If you want brown, which I'm assuming, then Snakebite Leather I think is too light, frankly. But Wildwood's too dark. I can't off the top of my head think what's the one that's in between those two colors, but yeah, that's like feathers and stuff like that. That texture is perfect for chaos. Contrast. WizKids. Oh, yeah. I picked up one of these at my local shop. And it's a Cthulhu from WizKids. And you can't maybe tell here, but like the base is all clear, like he's coming up out of the water, like Release the Kraken and stuff. And on the back, like they painted him, but then they didn't paint any of the clear parts, so you can see right through him, which looks kind of weird. But what I'm thinking I'm going to do is I'm going to mask off the clear parts from the outside, and then I'm going to paint him with my airbrush and do all that kind of stuff. But he's also, you can't quite see it here, he's hollow. There. He's hollow. And then, so my thought is that I'll paint the inside of the clear areas the same color green as the outside, which will then, if I've masked off the outside clear parts, it will look like clear water on the outside, but you'll still see the color of Cthulhu coming up from underneath. And I'm going to give that a try, because yeah, this one looks weird, because it's like as soon as water touches him, he becomes invisible. It's not a good design. But yeah, it was like $15 for like a fancy model, which is one of the reasons that the WizKids ones are sort of fun. Now, immediately, like there are gaps on his arms. You can see them from here. They're huge, so I'm going to have to do some work there. That's the downside sometimes of the WizKids models. But yeah, I just picked him up recently because he's cool. Ray says, hello from Texas, painting my Warcry Untamed Beasts using all contrast paints. Looks amazing. That sounds cool. Yeah, I mean, in those situations, like there's certain types of models that contrast works amazing on. So yeah, but... and so I'm not against contrast. Like I said, I've been using the white and the black pretty much exclusively on my Stormtroopers. I've been using the Wildwood Brown on my Scout Troopers. Did I use any of my Snow Troopers? No, I didn't. Some sort of animal shenanigans going on outside. Let's see here. I'm painting some Mantic Skeletons with contrast. Contrast is better for miniatures with more textures. Yes. Anything organic and has texture on it, it's good. The Skeleton Horde color, that contrast paint, is actually quite good for skeletons as well, especially if you've got a whole bunch to get through fast. Because I painted some Hex Wraiths with the contrast color Skeleton Horde. And... if I was going to do a whole bunch of skeletons, I would probably still prefer my normal technique, which I made a video about years ago, about how to paint your Skeleton Horde, and I think it's very interesting that they use the color Skeleton Horde for their contrast paints. I'm not saying I invented it, but never mind. Anyway, so the Skeleton Horde color. What I do is I prime them all like a tan color, either with a rattle can, like a Krylon, camouflage color, or I use a airbrush color. Primer is the word I'm looking for from Vallejo. Like a bleach bone or tan or whatever, and then I throw a sepia wash on there, and I go back and dry brush with a bleach bone, and then I dry brush just the top of the head and top of the shoulders and stuff like that with like a white, and then I go through and start painting the details and all the rest of them. And it's more steps, but not that much more, especially if you're doing like a lot of skeletons at once and you're doing like a assembly line. I'll have to sit down and compare. I should actually just do 2 skeletons. Yeah, maybe that's a good idea. It just seems like the skeleton horde color that I put on my hex wraiths came out a little darker. Now, if you want dirty skeletons, like they just got themselves out of the ground and they still not completely cleaned off yet, or whatever, haven't taken a shower, do skeletons shower? I'm not sure. Then the skeleton horde color is good. Or if you just want to throw a skeleton horde color on, wait till it dry, and then just do a little bit quick dry brush to kind of bring things back up again, I bet you that would also work super well. And that'd be like a 2-step process. I should try that on some skeletons I got laying around, like in my closet. Skeletons? Anyway, they're not actually in my closet. They're in the basement. Justin asks, what are your thoughts on using alternatives? I'm assuming you mean like proxies. Looking at the kangaroo tank from Victoria Miniatures. Looks really cool. I'm familiar with Victoria Miniatures. I don't know what the kangaroo tank is. That sounds kind of cool. Does it have legs on it and bounce around? It has a pouch. No, I'm fine with proxies. I'm a big fan. I mean, I know that a lot of tournaments seem to poo-poo it to some degree, but I have no problem with it. I enjoy that kind of stuff. Jared says, using contrast for my Death Guard killed team. Looks great, but that's about as organic of a model as I'm willing to paint with contrast, and will keep the normal paints for my Eldari army. Yes, Death Guard, I could see using plenty of the really nice green colors that they do for Death Guard, because Death Guard's very bumpy and spotty because they're gross, because they're dead, or whatever, ill, like me. I've got a little bit of Death Guard going on right now. Yeah, so I could easily see doing that with those types of Marines, Death Guard Marines in contrast. Absolutely. Yeah, that would work super, super well, I think. Charles asks, do you know what Gaslands is? Yes, I do. We played Gaslands at TMX, at the Tabletop Minions Expo, back in June. And it was run by our friend, the Noob Painter, and we had lots of fun, and it was great. Starla says, one more question. I dry brush white after priming gray and before painting, but I can't notice the highlighting after painting. Thoughts, please? Thanks for answering my other question. So, there are people that will... See, if you do that, if you prime gray, then dry brush white, it's kind of like a zenithal highlight, which is awesome. But then if you just put normal paint over it, you're probably not going to notice the difference, because normal paint is designed to be a bit more opaque. When I do zenithal highlighting, when I do like a black to white or even a gray to white, where you can either do it by priming and then dry brushing, or you can do it with priming and then spraying white from above, or whatever, however you want to do it. If you want to see that variation again, then the best idea is to use glazes for your colors instead of paints, because paints are much more opaque and glazes are by design transparent, but they still have a lot of pigment in them. So I don't have any good pictures I can show you. If you go to the YouTube, well, okay, so I've got a video on YouTube called Understanding Underpainting, and that one is a good one to kind of explain all that. But also, if you just look at the main channel page that I have on YouTube, just go to youtube.com/tabletopminions, there are some Chaos Warriors in that top banner image that goes across the page, and they have green cloaks, and they've got their backs to the camera. Those cloaks are literally me priming them black and then priming them from white, or with white from above. I used an airbrush, even though I'm making a rattle can hand gesture. But yeah, I used the airbrush. So then they have this fade from black to white, and then I just used a green secret weapon wash over it. It went blurp, one shot, and it looks like I've faded from black to like dark green to light green to very, very light green before I hit the fur at the top of their shoulders. That's the way that works. Now, some people will use zenithal highlighting as a guide, a visual guide, so that as they're painting, they can see, well, this is where I should have the blending start and everything, but they're not actually using the colors. They don't want the colors to bleed through, or the values actually, between black and white, or let's say gray and white. They just want to use the visual cue to know where to blend. I'm not that guy. If I'm going to spray black to white or white to black or whatever, I'm going to throw something transparent over the top of it so that I get the benefit of doing that. So that's kind of how I do that. Excuse me. Radio Free Hammer Hall says, always just ask your TO, your tournament organizer, if you have any question. The proxy rules can be surprisingly flexible. With normal tournaments, like at a shop and stuff like that, in a lot of situations, yes, that's true. Like if it's an independent shop or whatever, it depends. Actually, sometimes independent shops don't like you to use proxies because they want you to come in and buy the models, which I don't totally get. But like if it's a tournament run like at a just completely independent from a store, a lot of times those tournament organizers, yeah, they're fine with proxies. As long as it makes sense, as long as you can look at it and I can explain it and go, these are these guys and these are those guys and these are that, and you can kind of tell, then it works just fine. Let's see here. The Nightbringer. No vowels, but I think I figured it out. The Nightbringer says, I ran Skeleton Horde, contrast paint, through my airbrush for my new Necron vehicle color, and it turned out pretty good. I've been hearing about people using the contrast colors in their airbrush, and I have not tried that. That's one last sort of thing I want to do before I make my contrast video, because I'd like to check that out. So there's that. Excuse me. But yeah, so I would like to see how that works through the airbrush. I've heard good things. I think Sam has told me a little bit about it as well. Speaking of Sam, this is preliminary, but on the 21st of this month, September? Yeah. 21st of this month, which is a Saturday, from noon to 2, I will be having the normal once per month Uncle Adam's Irregulars live chat. I do a live chat once a month for just the folks who are Patreons, at the top level, the $4 level, the Uncle Adam's Irregulars. And I usually try to do it on the Saturday that's closest to the 20th of the month. So the 21st is that. But then, so that can get done around 2-ish. And then at 4 o'clock, I'm going to be at Sam's place. And we're going to be doing a Twitch stream, the two of us, at his studio. I have no idea what I'll be working on. I'll bring something along to work on, although I don't know that I'll paint. I'll probably build. I don't paint well outside of my basement, but I can build. So I'll be doing that, and we'll be answering questions and having a good time and yammering on and whatnot. So that's going to be on the 21st, Saturday the 21st of September, 4 p.m. Central Time on Sam's Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/Samson Arts, I think. So yeah, that's where that's at. So that's gonna be fun. Let's see here. I didn't know there was a universal rattle can hand gesture. Oh, there is. Yeah. Let me see here. People talking about cosplaying Gaslands. I may have missed that. That doesn't sound right. John Ashley Smith says, going to a Hot Wheels show next weekend. Brother-in-law has a table, hopefully to demo Gaslands to a new crowd. That would be a great crowd to, well, although I'm betting that probably some of them will be like, you can't paint Hot Wheels. That ruins their value. You know what I mean? Like, I could see some of them being like, that's not cool, you can't do that. But there's also some of them that I think that might really enjoy it. That's a good idea. I didn't even know there were Hot Wheels shows, but it makes sense. I mean, there's comic shows, there's baseball card shows, there's all kinds of shows. That makes sense. John J. asks, is there a downside to priming with an airbrush? The only thing is that I find difficult sometimes to prime with an airbrush, big pieces of terrain, because it takes forever. And I mean, like, when I say big, I mean like big. I mean, I've got a what do you call it? Realm of Battle board. Realm of Battle board, no fun to prime with an airbrush, especially in my airbrush room because it's kind of tiny and those things are 2 feet by 2 feet each. So yeah, I prime that outside with a rattle can. The other thing is that if the model is plastic, certain rattle can plastic primers really hunker down and stick to that plastic well, whereas airbrush primer is not formulated to chemically or molecularly or whatever, I'm no scientist, bond with the plastic as much. So I have had, you can knock off airbrush primer sometimes, like with really hard, dry brushing with a bad brush, like not a good brush, not a nice soft makeup brush, but something else. Or like if you drop it sometimes. But when you use like spray can, like Krylon, like with fusion technology, and you use it on a plastic piece of terrain, like a plastic terrain kit, that stuff's not coming off. Probably not even in like a good stripping compound. So that's the only thing. Otherwise, I love being able to prime with my airbrush because I can get up into the nooks and crannies so much quicker and easier. Like when you have a model, I'm going to take this model right here as an example. When you have a model and you spray it outside and you've got it sitting on the cardboard along with its friends and you spray it, you get paint on the top, but you don't get paint underneath, like underneath where he's holding his axe and all that stuff. So what I do is I wait 10 minutes or so and then I knock all the models onto their back and then I try to spray them this way to get it up underneath like the gun or the handle of the weapon or whatever and all that stuff. And then I let them sit another 10 minutes and then I flip them over on their tummies and then I spray again and try to get underneath the backpack and all that kind of junk, depending on the models. When I use an airbrush, I've got this guy stuck to something, whether it's one of those GW handles that I like a lot or it's one of those painting sticks that you use to stir that you get from the hardware store, and I've got him stuck on there with poster putty, and then I can, as I'm spraying with my airbrush, which is like this. This is the universal symbol, hand symbol for airbrush. Then I can get it up into all those spots all in one coat. I can spray from above, spray underneath, do all that stuff, and it's way easier. So that's the big benefit for me for priming. Plus the fact that I can do it in the middle of winter, or if it's raining, or whatever, all that kind of stuff. It's very useful. I'm going to go to the logo for a second and dab at my nose. So anyway, there we go. And we're back. Yes, so that's why I like using the airbrush. It's also frequently less grainy. That is also true. Hey, it's Kelly. How's Kelly doing? Hey, Adam et al. Slowly returning to the hobby here in humid Georgia. That you are going to want to get yourself an airbrush if you don't already have one. Yeah, especially in Georgia because humidity is a thing. John Ashley Smith says, not true. Tons of custom paint job contests. You lose points in competition for gluing the wheels. Oh, that makes sense. Well, sure, I could see there being paint competitions, but I'm sure that there are certain models that are expensive or rare, and if you paint them, that like ruins the cost or whatever. Like, I mean, kind of like in what's that show? Antiques Roadshow. Like, oh, well, yeah, you took this table and you refinished it. That's great. If you hadn't refinished it, it'd be worth $100,000. But now it's worth about $38. So, it could be that thing, too. I don't know. But, yeah, I could definitely see there be also being... I've seen video channels where people take old Matchbox cars and, like, Hot Wheels that they find, that have, like, from the 60s that are beat to hell, and they take them all apart and repaint them and stuff like that. And that's really kind of interesting. RZ says, thinking of trying black contrast paint on a knight's armor. Black over metallic or dry metallic over black. Well, gosh. The thing about the Black Templar contrast color is it is very opaque. You will see, if you put it over metallic, you will only really see the results of the metallic, maybe on the raised parts. But in the dark parts, you're not going to see metallic at all because it's a very dense, in comparison to many of the other colors, it's very dense. As is the Wildwood color. So, I don't know, you could give it a try. I would honestly almost go the other way where you throw down the black stuff, the Black Templar color. let that completely dry, and then do some silver dry brushing over the top of it. That will probably maybe get a little too much, so you're going to have to find an ease, kind of a middle ground in there, but yeah, that's probably the way to go. Let's see here. Quiet Side says, I am once again wearing trousers. Yeah, same here. Yeah, because it's been shorts mostly for like the last 3 months, but then recently it started getting chilly again, so I was like, well, pants. Let's see here. The Animaster says, I find that using actual models to practice on is best practice, pun unintended. Local GW stores like to hand out models for practice. You can paint, strip, and repeat as necessary. I mean, if you can find them, yeah. Like, I've done plenty of practice on junk that I've gotten on eBay, frankly. Like, oh, these are a bunch of Space Marines that are just not great, but I can use them for practice. I'm becoming a bigger fan, though, of practicing on, like, Army Men and stuff like that. It's not a great plastic, obviously. And there's no chance that you're going to get done with it and go, well, this is awesome. I'm going to put it in my army, probably. But I think that just the cost savings and the ease, like going through the whole process of getting stuff on eBay, for some folks is just not something they're interested in. Going to the grocery store or Target or Kmart or whatever and going yoink and buying a bag of plastic army folks is not that difficult or expensive. So yeah, I'm actually working on a video idea for practicing on Army Men and stuff like that. The Animaster says, if you practice on cheapo models, you will run into frustration with lack of details. Well, yes, but if you're trying to practice techniques like wet blending, glazing over zenithal highlights, stuff like that, you get the hang of it pretty easily on those cheap models. If you're trying to get in and paint super and make them look awesome, I mean, they're not awesome to start with. So, yeah, but if you can get them not bad over something that's kind of a piece of garbage, then you've obviously done relatively well. So, yeah. Aaron asks, are you getting into any non-Warhammer tabletop miniature games in the future? So, I am working on, slowly, well, let's see, I'm playing Star Wars Legion, which is not made by Games Workshop. I've painted an entire 800-point list of Star Wars Legion Empire. It's all stormtroopers, scout troopers, snow troopers, death troopers, General Veers, and Director Krennic. And that is, and a medical droid. And that's done. So that's 800 points. And then they did, see, this was crazy. So it was like 797 points. And then just recently, they're like, hey, we did a big points shift on a bunch of stuff. And I was like, oh, crap. Well, turns out my 797 point army now turned into a 799 point army. So I was like, sweet. I don't have to change anything. Awesome. So yes, I'm definitely getting into that. And I've talked about that on a couple of different shows recently about the stormtroopers and that. And I'm moving into the terrain. I'm doing a bunch of desert terrain for it. And then I'm moving into the rebels after that. Then I'm also working on a game called Zone Raiders. And Zone Raiders is a super far future kind of post-humanity, sort of post-singularity sci-fi skirmish game. And I've got some terrain purchased for that that's mostly laser cut MDF. And I want to do some interesting things with that and build a little board. And they don't have a model line, so it is using models from either other companies, like I might be able to modify some of the models from Wreck Age and be able to use some of those folks. I do that, and then other models where I'm basically cutting apart maybe like a GW model and putting on like a weird resin head from some company in Poland. I did just recently get a bunch of heads from W. Artel, which at first I thought was Wardle, but it's not. It's W. Artel. And they shipped me a whole bunch of... I went onto their website and bought a bunch of heads, and they sent me a lot of bubble wrap, and then there are some heads in here. Oh, and some guns, too. Oh, no, actually, I didn't order heads from these guys at all. No, I just ordered guns. No, I did order heads. Yeah, there's a little baggie of heads. You can kind of... over here. And I'd also ordered a little baggie of guns. And I did get 2 figures, which I thought were kind of cool. But, yeah, that I've been doing stuff like that. That's where I've been working lately. But at some point, I'm going to also be getting into be painting my Tyranids for Kill Team. I'm looking at getting the Warcry stuff painted and going down that road. So I don't only stick with GW stuff, but it's stuff that I do enjoy. So, you know, I do have a tendency to talk about it and things like that. But I like other stuff as well. Roland says, I just wanted to say thank you to Tabletop Meetings and Uncle Adam. And with your help, I was able to tackle a very daunting project and with stubborn until I was able to get the results I was looking for. Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. Carl O'Toole says, I'm making a scale planet, and I need a water effect. Okay. Any recommendations for something that will work on a sphere? Don't have any... Oh, geez. So you want... Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're making a planet, and you want to... Yeah. Geez. I don't know how you would do resin on a sphere. You would be almost, honestly, better off trying to do gloss coat. But if you're trying to get, like, depth, you know, like you do when you do a normal resin pour on a flat, like, diorama or something like that, I don't know how that's going to work on a sphere. That is beyond my area. I've never even done a resin pour. I've only ever done, like, I need to make these look like puddles, so I put a bunch of gloss varnish in there. And that's worked just fine. Let's see here. What is the oldest mini you own? Do you have any original lead from back in the golden age, like Grenadier El Partho or my favorite Heritage? Somewhere, I have a really, really, really old... Here he is. My neighbor across the street gave me this guy. He's like he's holding a horn. You can't see him real well, but he is like melted down fishing sinkers poured into a mold on your stove. Like this is he's got a little kind of integrated base, and so this is probably the oldest miniature well, to be fair, he could have been poured in 2010. I don't think so, though, but he is, so that's probably the oldest miniature I own, and it just happens to be here on top of my computer. Nick Jones says, hey, Adam, do you like bolt action? I like the system. I have a tendency to find myself more drawn to Conflict 47, because I'm not completely into historicals yet. I still need some werewolves and lasers with my historical stuff, so that's kind of where that's at. Let's see here. What else have we got? David Cooper says, do you have an address where I can send you some stuff? I do. Where is it? Button. Nope, I did something bad. There we go. There it is. If you do want to send some stuff, I've got a P.O. box. Tabletop Minions at 2080 West 9th Avenue, number 331, Oshkosh, Wisconsin 54904. I check it about once a week, roughly. It's I check it sometimes on the way home from work. So anyway, yeah, that's Tabletop Minions, 2080 West 9th Ave, number 331, Oshkosh, Wisconsin 54904. And so if you did want to send something, I appreciate it. I like seeing things that come in. What did I get recently? Not much that I can think of off the top of my head at that box. I was just there recently. What did I get from there? Oh, I think I did get the heads shipped there. Yeah. All right, let's see here. JP Got Rockets is suggesting you could just gloss coat it. You could stipple on Mod Podge if you want some wave textures. Yeah. I mean, again, because it's a sphere, you're going to want to work on it, not do the entire thing at all at one time, because then all the Mod Podge will slowly run to the bottom. Because the sphere does not have gravity like our planet does. So, yeah, that's not going to work. You're going to want to work on parts of it and keep those parts pointed up, and then once that part's kind of dry, you might want to move to the next little ocean or whatever. That's probably your best bet. But I could see Mod Podge working well, but Gloss Coat's probably also going to work well as well. Other people saying roughly the same thing. Make sure the ocean areas are smooth and paint dark blue. Yep. Tim Royce says, "Well, Woodland Scenic's realistic water effects are what I've heard to be the best water effect. They are, but they need to have like walls. If you're gonna make water effect with it, it needs to have an air because it will run. You know what I mean? Like it is a liquid, and if you just poured it onto like a spot on the globe, it would just go. Blurb. Like that's the sound effect that would happen. Yeah. So there you go. Ben Puffer says, assembling some minis. Everyone says to start at the bottom, but I'm not sure how I want to base them. So do I just assemble it laying down for now? Honestly, the way that I seem to assemble most of my models is I have a tendency to build them. Like I put, like glue the torso to the legs and this and that and arms and the head and all that jazz. And then last thing I do is I glue them to the base. I don't know why that is. I don't generally start working my way up. I generally build the model and then glue the model to the base. And then after I've glued the model to the base, then I put a texture on the base and then I prime it. So that's the way I do it. I don't know. Like if you're one of those people who wants to keep the models separate from the base because you want to paint them separately and then put them together at the end, well, that's a different story. But if you're just going to do that, it's the way to go. There's evidently some cat shenanigans going on now here inside the house. Got a little bit of a racetrack going on. Let's see here. I don't know what was going on, but none of our cats have got snow tires or are good on everything's hardwood or linoleum. And when they really get running, especially Margot, she will run into the kitchen. And now she's repeatedly sneezing. I don't know what's going on. It's a wacky Sunday morning here over at the house. She ran into the kitchen, tried to make the turn. I think hit the recycling bin, bounced off some other stuff, and is now sneezing repeatedly. I don't even know. Let's see here. Eric Simpson says, I just built a Chariot of Slaanesh. Slaanesh? Sometimes I say Slaanesh, even though it doesn't look like it should say that, but there's two A's, and so all bets are off. I don't know. Out of bits and figs from 1985 to recent. I still have old white lead figs. Don't lick them. No, that's true. Do not lick them. I had them sitting around that long. Send me some Kleenex. Oh, I've got Kleenex. I got a whole box right here. See, it's fine. But, yeah, still. Anyway, Kleenex. No. One thing that I saw that was cool at Nova, which I should probably start talking about Nova soon, and that is, I'm going to just try to, sorry. One thing that was cool that was at Nova was there was a booth there, a company called White Metal Games, and they are like a commissioned painting studio, and they do stuff like that, and they also, in the last 2 years that I've been at Nova, they bring like a huge selection of like custom bits by a company called Spellcrow, which I think is from Poland, and it's all resin. And they make all kinds of cool add-on stuff. And it's admittedly a lot of it is aimed kind of towards, Games Workshop to some degree. Like, so it's replacement shoulder pads that look different and this kind of stuff. But you can use a lot of those parts, not the shoulder pads so much, but you can use like the capes and all the other weird stuff for other things, and it's pretty cool. But they had this one like blister pack, which I didn't buy because I don't think I really have a need for it. Or did I buy it? I don't know. But it was like kind of like a Space Marine arm, but then like a lobster claw at the end, which obviously is a Slaanesh thing. But yeah, that was cool. But they have like Spellcrow is really hard to find like in any place in the United States, I find. But it's always cool to see those guys bring a whole bunch of that stuff there. So that was cool. Devin Jones says, does Oshkosh have any bagash? I don't think so. Technically anymore. Used to be, yes. Oshkosh Bagash, the brand for like kids and adults and stuff like that, but mostly kids, used to be based out of Oshkosh. And then they got bought by Carter's, and Carter's is based out of Georgia somewhere. And so now most of, I think, the Oshkosh Bagash stuff is out of town now. John J. says, when I lived in Minnesota, I recall excursions to Wisconsin to get the Spotted Cow brew. So good. Spotted Cow is quite good, and you can still predominantly just get it in Wisconsin, I think. Although I know that like Fat Tire, Fat Squirrel, and stuff like that, I was seeing that outside of Wisconsin now. But Spotted Cow is New Glarus.
Spotted cow and fat squirrel are New Glarus. Fat tire is someone else.
Oh yeah, it's Fat Tire is
New Glarus is Wisconsin only.
yeah, but I was seeing. Oh no, you're right. Yeah, I was seeing Fat Tire, which is New Belgium.
Yeah.
That's what we were seeing when I was in DC. Yeah. Let's see here. Aaron says that Marvel Crisis Protocol was at Gen Con and the miniatures looked like really good quality. If you like Marvel, that is. Yes, the I did see the models there, and they were pretty good. They are bigger scale than I'm used to. Excuse me. Yeah, so they're bigger scale because they're 40 millimeter, so they're taller. But they are well done looking. I would be personally, I would, I don't know. They're so smooth because they're so comic booky and everything like that. And I would think that you would really need to paint them. You would have to do a lot of airbrush, in my opinion. At least I would, to make them look the way I can see them in my head. So there's that. That's kind of a thing. Let's see here. John Ashley Smith says Wicked Air Show in Oshkosh. That is also true. Yes, that's very true. Let's see here. M. McMahon says, thanks, Adam. Your channel has kept me motivated in my hobby path, and I just completed one of the hobby bucket list goals. I got 2 different sets of models in the GW store page. Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah. My friend Ben just recently has had a couple of Adeptus Titanicus models that he's posted onto Instagram. So you can post things on Instagram that you paint that are GW models, and then there's a special hashtag I think you can put in there, and then they will monitor that hashtag, and when they see like really good stuff, they will shoot you a message in Instagram and say, hey, I think they actually make it a comment. They don't even do like a DM. I think it's actually a comment. There's like, hey, we'd really love to feature this on the store page for this model. Reply by saying such and such, and then we'll do it. And that's very cool. So yeah, congratulations on that. That's a lot of fun. Let's see here. Eric Simpson says, I've seen those Spellcrow bits. They're awesome for when I do an Emperor's Children army. Yeah, I can see that. That makes a lot of sense. Aaron says, just moved to California earlier this year, and I missed some Spotted Cow. I like, and I can't get it here, sadly, I like Yingling, which is mostly an East Coast kind of a thing. And it's even going beyond the East Coast. I mean, it's heading this direction. It's just not here in Wisconsin yet, sadly. But that's honestly, like, Yingling Lager is probably one of my favorite beers. But I am a beer... What's the opposite of snob? I don't know. Luddite? No, that's not right. I'm not big into fancy beer. I like kind of relatively normal beer, which my wife finds funny. Let's see here. The Animaster says, are there any major miniature/tabletop gaming events held in Florida? If I could figure out where the heck I put my phone. Oh, here. I could take a look. So, let's see here. I'm going to look in the Game 4 app and see what I can find. So, I'm going to go to Convention Finder and type in Florida. Poke. No? Question mark? Let's raise the radius a bit. No, I see Meeps and Peeps Con. That's in Alabama. I see Dice Drop Game Weekend, which is in Macon, Georgia. And I see CapCon, which is in Atlanta, Georgia. Those are just tabletop gaming. Those are not necessarily just miniatures or anything like that. But those are the ones that we've got currently in the Convention Finder for the Game 4 app. That you may be able to obviously find other stuff. Obviously not everything in the world is in our app. But that's where we're trying to put... we've got this Convention Finder in the app where we're trying to find ways to get more people into the local conventions, because they're kind of hard to find sometimes, and we want to become more of a what do you call it, like a hub, that like right now, if you're looking for tabletop gaming stores, and you use our store finder, we've got over 6,600 gaming stores in our database. So you can find a lot, pretty much anywhere you travel, which is awesome. And that's great. But for we just launched like earlier this year the convention finder, and so we're trying to get people to put their conventions in there and that kind of stuff and everything, and it's free. So hopefully, if you've got a friend that's running a convention, or if you're running a convention, go to Game 4, find the convention finder stuff, and you can put your events in there for free, your local convention and all that jazz. But that's where we're going from there. Matthew Sears says that Spellcrow sent me some goodies for the Dragonfall charity auction. Good people. Yeah, that is true. Dragonfall is a convention that'll be coming up in late October in northern part of Illinois, and I will be attending, as will Matthew Sears. Matthew Sears, moderator Matt here, he is the charity auction coordinator, so he has been getting stuff donated from so many game companies for the charity auction, and they're raising money, which is going to be cool. As we were walking around, I think it was on Sunday, walking around the dealer area at Gen Con back in the beginning of August, we were just walking around, and he was just like, yep, got stuff from them, they already sent me stuff. So he's been doing good work, and there's going to be a heck of an auction at the Dragonfall convention in late October. Hopefully Matt can put a link to the thingy. There you go. Boom, right there. Let's see here. Ryder asks, question, how good of a deal would a lot have to be to forgive diving in, as it were, as a newer hobbyist? How good of a deal would a lot have to be? You mean like an eBay lot, like a lot of models that you buy on eBay, and you have to go through and probably strip them and stuff like that? I don't know. If you really wanted to go crazy, depending on how big the lot is, you might want to see if you can get it for half retail. I mean, sometimes people will paint stuff, or they'll get it primed and then give up, or whatever the deal is and stuff. So yeah, that can be problematic. But yeah, definitely. Let's see here. Torch says, I don't like beer at all. Someone told me it was an acquired taste. I was never able to acquire it. Jamie says that Youngling is the best. When I was at university, I had a friend who lived there and you could get it, so I'd have her bring back multiple cases when she went home. I've got a friend who lives here in town who has a bar in his garage, and generally that fridge is stocked with Youngling because he's gotten so many people, so many of our friends, or his friends, my friends, people that we know together. He and I have known each other since high school. They know that if they're going east and then coming back here, they know they need to bring Travis some Yingling. So that's kind of the way that works. So he's generally got a decent, stuff in there, a decent amount of that stuff in his fridge. Let's see, what's that app for conventions called? I've been trying to find some in the Bay Area. It's called Game 4. So you can, sorry, clunked the mic there. It's Game 4, GAMEFOR. It looks like moderator Matt put a link into the chat, and it's an app that the company that I work for, my day job, we built it, and it is for connecting tabletop gamers. So the convention thing is just a small part of it. Like I said, there's also the store finder, there's also the events finder, there's a section there we call looking for players. So you can put in a listing and say, hey, I'm looking to play Age of Sigmar, but I also like to play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, but I also like to play, Twilight Imperium. So if you're interested in any of these 3 games, shoot me a message in the app, and it's a whole thing. I've talked about it quite a bit before, but Game 4 is an app for Android and iOS. It's also on the web. That allows you to be able to find gaming events in your area, game stores, no matter where you travel. Also, groups and clubs. I forgot about. There's also groups and clubs in there too. So yeah. Benja says, I just snipped the swinging chain from the hand of the Iron Golem Drill Master. How do I reconnect? It's a tough one. I would put some glue on it and just try to glue it and hold it. It's very difficult to pin that chain back on. If you use a good, super glue, CA glue, whatever, then probably it's going to work out, I would think. But it's, yeah, that's the problem with making very dynamic models with all kinds of, like, and you see the same thing in Malifaux, because the Malifaux stuff, it's just so crazy. There's so many, like, you've got someone with a chain or a whip or whatever, and it's swirling around and all that kind of stuff, and it looks amazing in concept, but then you're like, but when I build it, I'm going to either break it, or when I take it someplace, I'm going to break it, or if I use it in a game, I'm going to break it. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's kind of tough. Let's see here. What else have we got? Let me see. There used to be one. There's people talking about different conventions and things like that. That's cool. What else? Matthew Sears is giving a cat a belly rub, so that's good. That's always fun. We have one cat who is not interested in belly rubs. Diesel is not into that, but our two girls are very into belly rubs. They would like it just fine if my wife and I would both quit our day jobs and just rub their tummies. But that doesn't pay, as it turns out. So yeah, it's not going to work out. We have to do it on a part-time basis, which, these things happen. So let me see here. So let me talk about Nova Open while I still can, before everything starts to drain out of my head. So the Nova Open, Nova stands for Northern Virginia, because it technically takes place in Northern Virginia, but it is basically D.C., District of Columbia. Not really. I mean, it's technically outside the District of Columbia, but that whole kind of Washington, D.C. area is like, I don't know, there's like 28 states that touch it. Okay, not 28, but there's a lot of states that are all like right there. You got like Maryland, you got D.C., you got, Virginia, Northern Virginia, maybe not Virginia, I don't know. But it's a lot of stuff all stuck together. So even though technically I was in Northern Virginia for the convention, I was about 4 miles away from the White House. So, anyway. But it's this is my second year going, and it's in this convention center in Crystal City, which is very vertical. It's the only convention that I've been to where things are so vertical. Like, normally, like, the most of the playing and the vending and all that kind of stuff is all on one floor. And in this situation, the playing's on a couple different floors, the vending's in the basement, and then there's like seminars on the third floor or whatever. So it's all over the board, but it's kind of interesting that way because it's so sort of stacked. They do obviously big tournaments. You've got a big let's see, what did I see? I saw 30K tournaments, 40K tournaments. I saw Age of Sigmar tournaments. Really big, and if you look at the picture here, this was actually from a Middle-earth strategy battle game tournament. I have like one of the biggest Middle-earth strategy battle game tournaments, I think, in the United States. And they had tons of amazing tables and stuff like that, and a lot of really cool terrain. If you go check my Instagram, there was a bunch of really cool terrain, especially for the Middle-earth stuff, that was very well done. I mean, a lot of the tables have great terrain, but the Middle-earth tables were really spectacular. There was also a big Star Wars Legion tournament, X-Wing, War Machine. I'm going to miss a bunch, probably. Like I said, Malifaux, I think. Yeah, there was definitely a Malifaux tournament. So there was a lot of stuff going on there. It's not just like a GW thing. Plus, there's also a lot of hobby seminars, which is also very cool. And the hobby seminars, like you had Duncan from GW teaching stuff. Sam was teaching stuff. Sam taught, so the convention is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sam started teaching, his first seminars were technically starting the Sunday before the convention. Because there was a special deal where you could, there was a special thing where you could basically get like a special class. I think it cost me like $200, but you learned, I think, 4 hours on Sunday and then 8 hours on Monday and 8 hours on Tuesday. It was like one single giant class. It was really cool. But he also was teaching on the normal days that were during the convention as well. So, and there's a lot of people teaching. Vince was teaching, Vince Venturello, and a bunch of different people were teaching, Matt DiPietro, all that kind of stuff. So that was very cool. I got to teach my YouTube class, like I normally do. Although, well, it's different this time because this time instead of having two classes separate, where it's one's the technical and one's the like marketing and branding and all that kind of junk, this time I squished both of those together into one class. And then I taught two other classes that were technically kind of painting classes. And I say kind of because I didn't actually do any painting during the class. What I was explaining in my classes were how to cut corners, like different techniques and things you can do to get stuff on the table fast. And the idea was that the folks from Nova back last year, they saw the video I did about cutting corners, and they're like, could you just make a class that was like that? Because we've got a lot of people who come to Nova who want to get stuff on the table quickly so that they can play the tournaments, because the tournaments didn't used to really have much of a painting requirement, and now they are having more of a painting requirement. So I taught both of those classes. They both sold out. That was very cool. But it was basically just me it was lecturing, honestly. I wasn't going to say, okay, we're all going to sit down and we're all going to rattle can here in the class. I'm going to teach you how to do like a Zenithal highlight, because that's just not going to work. But I can show you this is without, this is with it. I can kind of show you what you need to do and all that kind of stuff. But it worked out pretty well. It was fun. So I enjoyed those classes as well. There's a lot of vendors there. Games Workshop was there. Games and Gears was there. Let me see, who else? I'm going to forget a whole bunch of them, but there was a decent amount of them. Table War, Death Ray Designs, Anvil 8, which is the guys that make Ethereum. I think that's what it's called. I forget exactly. And a bunch of other games as well, but that's their kind of miniature game. Fallout Hobbies, The Magnet Baron, Tectonic Studios. They do a lot of laser cut MDF. There were a bunch of other ones as well. Game Envy, they make one of these, actually. They make this thing, which I actually didn't pick up this year. I picked up it, I think, at LVO. And it's a handle, and then you put, it's got like a thing on the top here. You use like poster putty or glue, and you attach your model to like a bottle cap from a 20-ounce soda, and you screw it on here. And now you've got this nice handle for holding your model so you can paint, and then you've also even got like a big thing up here, so you need to hold it differently so you can really kind of get in there and get underneath the shield or whatever. And so, yeah, Game Envy, they make a lot of cool stuff for those kind of accessories and things like that. They were there. Grex, the airbrush people, were there. They make those kind of more trigger type airbrushes as opposed to the push down button type ones, stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of different companies there. Firmer Terra, they make foldable 4x6 gaming tables that you can kind of make portable to some degree. But yeah, it's a small convention. It's smallish. It's I think around 3,000 people, which is still pretty good, but it's not a huge convention. It's not Gen Con huge, but it's also for charity, which is also cool. They're raising money for. Last I heard, it was Doctors Without Borders, Breast Cancer Research Foundation, or Fund. Breast Cancer Research, something with an F. Either fund or foundation. And who else? I think the Fisher House, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And they have a big raffle. They were raffling off a huge, fully painted Warlord Titan that was painted by Sam and Vince and a whole bunch of other people. Let me see, who else? There was also a bunch of different armies that were set up that you could then also, there's a raffle, and again, it was all for charity and all that jazz. And then there's a big painting competition that goes on called the Capital Palette. The thing that's interesting about this painting competition in comparison to like the old Crystal Brush or to like, other stuff like, let's say, the upcoming Golden Demon that they're going to be having at Adepticon again, is that there are 3 levels. You have Apprentice, Journeyman, and Master. And when you come in, you can kind of like say, well, I've just started painting. And like, all right, we'll put you in Apprentice. Or like, well, I've been doing it for a while. This is like my 3rd or 4th competition. All right, maybe we'll put you in Journeyman or whatever. And our good friend here, Emily, Emily Yasesko here, she won a silver in the Apprentice bust competition. She had the Scottish lady Boudica, which was really, really good. And then she also won a gold in the vehicle category for Apprentice, which was very cool. and also won Best in category for her vehicle. She did a what do you call it? Imperial Knight, but she'd modified it and made it like Thousand Suns kind of, and there was tentacles and water effects and all kinds of cool crap going on. So yeah, definitely we were all super happy for her because she was there, and I was there, and Sam was there, and a bunch of other people were there. But yeah, so she got a silver and a gold and best in category. So we were all super excited about that. So it's a cool, and the big awards and all that stuff for the events, or for the the painting competition, were all on Sunday. Sam didn't win anything because Sam was a judge this year. So because he won best in show last year. So like for like overall best in show in the Masters, he won best in show. So he was a judge this year. So he couldn't really enter anything. But Vince won a bunch of stuff too. He won a bunch of, in the Masters category, he won a bunch of silvers and some golds, things like that. So it was super fun. It was really great. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's a good convention. I like, this year the weather was way better than last year, because last year it was like 95 degrees Fahrenheit with like 99% humidity. You went outside like to go to one of the food trucks and you would die. You would just literally die, and it was sad. But you'd get better. This year it was like in the mid 80s and not very humid, so that was lovely. Yeah, definitely. It was very cool. Frankie Lee Bailey says one of the minions won the Warhound Titan too. Oh, I didn't even hear about that. That's pretty cool. Let's see here. But yeah, so Emily won that, and that was very cool. And Vince won a bunch of stuff. That was a lot of fun. I wish that we all got to live a little closer to each other. Vince is a lot of fun, and it's nice. I live right near Sam. He's not that far away, so that's cool. But it would be better if we could all just like really just Let's see. Isaac asks, "Did you ever strip those minis that you dipped in stain?" You mean like the Minwax stuff? No, I've never tried. That's a good question. I've never tried like any kind of stripping stuff on models that have got like a Minwax on it. I mean, that polyurethane on it, I would bet that would be really tough to get through. Now, let's see. I think I've only ever dipped models back in the day when I first started painting. I only ever dipped models that were metal, so I probably could use something pretty harsh on them, acetone, maybe something like that, to get that cleared out and figured out. But yeah, I've never tried it though. Like with normal, like my favorite stripping compound right now is called LA's Totally Awesome, and you get it at the dollar store, and it costs $1. Strangely enough, it's bright yellow, and you get like a 32-ounce bottle of it. And I've not tried that though on any kind of that stuff like Minwax or even the dip from Army Painter. Although the dip from Army Painter, in comparison to Minwax, is a good deal thinner, both in, well, specifically in viscosity. I don't know if it's thinner in pigment, but it's definitely thinner in viscosity, at least in my feeling. Let's see here. John Ashley Smith, says, "I kind of love that humidity. I know, I'm a freak." Yeah, that's not my jam. Yeah. Do you think that LA's Totally Awesome would hurt resin models? I don't think so. I mean, they sell it at the dollar store for cleaning like stuff, like not, I don't know what. I do know that if you use it to clean your walls in your kitchen and then you try to paint over it, if you don't rinse it all off, the paint that you try to paint on your kitchen walls will not stick to those spots. My wife and I have a very good friend who went through a lot of shenanigans, and she was like, she just could not get the paint to stick in all the spots in her kitchen, and she'd done all this stuff and everything and then whatnot and everything, and it was a mess, and it was back and forth to the paint store and all that kind of stuff. And then she's like, and I even like I went through and I treated the walls beforehand. I cleaned them with the stuff that I got from the dollar store, and I just jokingly said, "Oh, LA is totally awesome." And she's like, "Yeah, it's bright yellow, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's for stripping paint. That's what we use it for." Maybe I'm like, "Did you not clean it all off of the walls?" And she's like, "I might have missed some spots." And that's from the way it looked, because it would stick almost everywhere, but in certain spots it would go crackle paint, just bad. And so eventually it was determined that very possibly maybe the LA is Totally Awesome was not completely rinsed off of all the spots on the walls, and that's why the paint didn't stick very well. So whether I don't think it would ruin a resin mini. Best way to test that out is if you have any leftover resin pieces. Like normally when you buy a resin model, you've got the extra resin bits that sort of stick to it. Like it's not sprue, but it's like a big weird chunk and all that kind of stuff. If you throw that in there for like a couple of days and see what it does, if it gets soft, if it gets bendy, if it gets weird. Now, if you bought the model it's resin already, you bought it pre-painted from somebody else that's on eBay, you probably don't have any of the extra resin laying around. I would do a little bit of research online, but I've not heard of anybody having any trouble with it. So, I mean, like, I would not use brake fluid on resin models because I do very strongly believe that it would eat that. There are a couple other things that I would see being troublesome, but I think I used the purple stuff. I used Super Clean on a resin, not even regular resin, but fine cast. Ugh. I used it on a fine cast model a couple years ago. It was an Undead or Krell, whatever his name is there, and I used it on him, and it was fine. So I would think that LA's Totally Awesome would not be problematic, but we'll see. Let's see. Brew Geek says that LA is Totally Awesome will take off the poly dip, it just takes longer. Well, that sounds pretty good. The Iron Horse 72 says the orange furniture stripper works pretty well on poly. But, well, it doesn't ruin wood. The orange furniture stripper stuff doesn't. So, but you don't leave it on there forever. Like I've watched some videos of people like refinishing furniture. Like they go to like Goodwill or whatever, and they buy some weird end table, and then they fancy it up, and then I'm assuming resell it. I don't know, or maybe they just put it in their house. I'm not sure, but there's YouTube channels about people who just do this for fun and potentially profit. I don't know, but yeah. So this guy, I've watched this guy. He always puts this orange goop on it, and it's like some sort of citrusy orange stuff, and you put it on there, and you spread it all around, and then you wait 5 minutes or whatever, and you scrape it off like a plastic scraper or something like that. I don't know if that will do anything there. So yeah. LA's Totally Awesome is a standard industrial degreaser. Christopher says, "Do you think a sonic cleaner would hurt resin?" Oh no. I have definitely used. I've used my ultrasonic cleaner with different stripping compounds and stuff like that with resin, and I've never had any trouble with that. I mean, in any situation, when you strip a model, you kind of expect that it's going to fall apart. And when I say fall apart, I mean the glue joints are going to give way. So you're going to probably have to end up gluing it back together again, but there's no harm in that, really. Ramus Builds says, use hand sanitizer to strip resin models. I just heard about using hand sanitizer to strip models recently. It's probably more expensive than LA's Totally Awesome and that kind of stuff. But I would like to try that out and see what it does. I may have to make a follow-up to my Pitfalls of Stripping video from years ago. Although I'm going to have to change the name on it this time so it doesn't get demonetized like the last one did. So, yeah. The Animaster says, any more swag from Nova? Let's see. I didn't buy much because I had to fit it in my luggage to get it back home again. So, yeah, let's see. I didn't buy anything from Games Workshop. Did I? I bought a little bit of resin terrain from, what's the name of that company? Armorcast. And I bought that. It's old school kind of terrain stuff from Armorcast made out of resin, like bright yellow resin. And, or maybe bright tan. I don't know. Anyway, I picked that up actually from the Bits guy. That was the only thing I bought from the Bits guy this year. I didn't buy any bits. I just bought some resin that he had. Resin, like little low walls and the kind of ruined walls and stuff. So I'll scrub those up with a toothbrush and a little bit of just a dab of soap and some water. because with resin stuff, you always want to clean it before you start priming it because it'll have mold release on it. And mold release is something you put on the inside of the mold so that when you want to take the finished resin out of the mold, that it will release it, because otherwise it'll get stuck inside there, which sucks. So, but the mold release, paint doesn't like to stick to it, so you have to clean resin models before you paint them. Anyway, so I picked up some of that stuff. I actually picked up some resin terrain from White Metal Games, which I mentioned earlier. White Metal Games, they're like a commissioned painting studio, and they also, sell stuff, like I said, like they sell the Spellcrow stuff and some other things. But they've also started to getting into their own, they're getting into their own making terrain. So they've sculpted stuff up, and then they're making molds, and they're pulling resin from it and stuff like that. So they have their own brand of terrain that they're selling. So I picked up some of that stuff too, which was cool. What else? I didn't buy anything from Death Ray Designs. They make a lot of really cool laser cut MDF. I was gonna, but then I was like, I think I might just order it later because it's not going to fit in my luggage. I was going to get my head scan in 3D and then get little tiny 3D heads that I could then put onto other minis. But because it was a company that was doing it, but then their computer went down and it never came back up again. This admittedly was like Sunday afternoon, so there wasn't much time. I flew out at like 6, so yeah, it was kind of last minute, and then their computer glitched out and everything, so I wasn't able to get it done. So maybe next time. I didn't buy a lot of stuff. I did pick up some brushes from Games and Gears, and some brush cleaner for them. They have this purple brush cleaner stuff that I want to try out too. So yeah. Excuse me. Let's see. Let's see here. Use demethylated spirits to strip resin, or leave it in isopropyl for a couple of days. I think I need to go on to Amazon and buy some 99% isopropyl. I can't find it anyplace locally. Like at the local, like the drugstores and the grocery stores, the best I can find, someplace I saw 91%, but 99% I also want to try out because it's really, really good for, well, it's good for a bunch of hobby stuff. One thing is for stripping models, and I want to test it for that. But also, my friend Matt at work says that he uses it on the plate of his 3D printer when he is going to print something. That's how you clean it off and stuff like that. So I want to give that a try as well. Jared H says if you yell loud enough, the paint comes off like in a cartoon. I have not tried that. I believe it. I totally believe it. No, absolutely. Considering that the active ingredient in hand sanitizer is isopropyl alcohol, I can see that working as far as stripping paint off of it, says VJ Morph. That makes sense. I should give that a try. JP Got Rocket says it's the alcohol in the sanitizer, and the detergent and glycerin is a carrier, and I can see how it would slough off the paint. Yeah, I can see that. I should try that out. Let's see. Isaac says, I'm looking to get into Kill Team, my local friendly local game store. My local friendly local game store. FLG is that always throws me off. And technically it's supposed to be FLGS. Anyway, yes, my local game store is getting started, has a getting started deal on Citadel Paints. Would it be better to try another paint or just bite the bullet on Citadel? Well, I mean, if it's a sale, if it's a deal, then maybe it's not a bad idea. So, I talked about this a little bit in my class at Nova. Generally, for my normal painting, I generally alternate between Vallejo and Army Painter. For normal, I'm going to take a brush and I'm going to put it on my wet palette. I'm going to paint and paint a model. For washes, I generally prefer the GW washes, although I do like I like some of the Army Painter ones. But the only problem with the Army Painter ones is that they're in a bottle. I like my washes in a pot, so I can dip the brush in there and then put it directly on the model. I like my paints, however, in a dropper bottle, so I can drop it onto my wet palette and then work from my wet palette. If the paint is in a pot, then I have to get it from the pot to the wet palette, and if I use the brush to do it, If I dip it too far, then I get paint up in the ferrule, and it sucks, and it's no good. So you'll see Sam quite frequently use the back of his brush almost like as a scoop to get stuff out of, like, because he has a tendency to use P3 paints from Privateer Press. So washes, my preference is generally GW. Regular paints, it's generally Vallejo and the Army Painter. But for dry brushing, I generally prefer the Citadel paints because they are generally thicker and, frankly, just a touch drier than a Vallejo or a Army Painter. So it's it's kind of different paints for different jobs. You know what I mean? So I've never stuck with just one brand, and I don't think anybody should. I mean, if you want to, knock yourself out. But generally, I'm all over the board is with paint brands. You kind of find out what works best for you. Like I said, I like the dropper bottles for ease of use and getting it onto my paint palette. But also, the stuff that's in the dropper bottles has a tendency to be just wetter paint slightly because air can't get in there as easily. Whereas a pot, air can get in there more easily. It's just when it's open, not even like it's a bad seal. I'm just talking about when it's open and you're doing stuff. There's just a bunch of air going in there. With a dropper bottle, there's a tiny little hole. And the paint comes out if you put the cap back on it. So it stays more fluid, in my opinion. But with dry brushing, I don't generally like my dry brush paints to be too fluid. I want them to be a little tackier. So then, it's a whole thing. Anyway, so there you go. Let's see here. John Ashley Smith says, cold season is visiting you early. Changing into autumn always gets people sick, sniffles. Well, like a bunch of people were saying earlier, they think it's probably con crud from Nova, which is very possible. So I apologize. I hope I'm not grossing people out too much. I'm trying to turn off the camera here or switch over to this screen when I have to try to wipe my nose a little bit. And it is getting a touch worse than it was at the beginning of the show. So there's that. But yeah, it is what it is. So we got about another half hour left, and hopefully I'll make it. So we should be fine. Joseph says, I use DOT4 brake fluid. We use it at the RC hobby to strip bodies, and it works wonders on minis. See, I've always heard it's bad for plastics, though, especially if you leave it in there for a longer period of time. But I don't know that for sure. Let's see here. What else have we got? Grimlock Steve says, I really hate GW, never have what I'm looking for in stock. Like at the store? Or like the company never has it in stock? The company never has stuff in stock. I don't want to say never. When the company doesn't have stuff in stock, a lot of times it's because the stuff's been real popular. If the store doesn't have stuff in stock, then either A, that's just a mixture of things being popular, or else their store managers not being very good about ordering stuff. So there's that. Let's see. Devin says he's making a Dune joke. Let's see here. Leon says, hi, Uncle Adam. Today is a glorious day. I've now got 116 completed Salamander Marines, 40% of them all. So much rejoicing over here. That's a lot of completed Salamanders. That's a huge Salamander army. I mean, good work on that. That's awesome. Darren Walker says, different paint strokes for different folks. Sure, yeah. I mean, that's kind of that's true, certainly, yeah. Let's see, what else have we got? The Animaster says that brake fluid for solvent-based or water-based paints. Also, how do you dispose of brake fluid? That's a good question. I don't know about that. Leon says that brake fluid will destroy your plastics. See, yeah, I've not heard good things about brake fluid with plastics. I've heard brake fluid on metal? Sure, all day. That works awesome. Cheryl says, we hope you feel better, Adam. Uncle Adam, your face sounds like it's not happy. Yeah, it's currently not. It's been lousy since Friday. So it's been kind of a wasted weekend, unfortunately. I was hoping to get a bunch of things done yesterday. I did, however, on Friday, with just Kleenex stuck up both nostrils, I sat in front of the computer and I got a new t-shirt design done. You can't see it yet because it's not on the store yet. My camera has locked up. Well, that's fun. But I'll keep talking. That's the first time it's happened so far today, so I got that going for me, which is nice. I'm going to just unplug this. So, yeah, new t-shirt design is coming. What happens when I do a new t-shirt design is that I go and get it produced from the company that I work with, which is a company called Teespring, and I get it produced, and then I get it shipped to me, and then I check the quality. Like I want to make sure that the design looks right on the color and all that kind of stuff. It's just technical junk. And then once it's cool, everything's fine, then I put it up in the store, and then people can buy it, and I start telling people about it. So that's coming hopefully soon. I ordered the shirt, and there's also going to be 2 sizes of posters as well. So that's coming. But I ordered that stuff Friday, so hopefully I will get it this coming week. And if everything goes well, then probably in time for the next Every Other Sunday show, new t-shirt design will be up. And then I've got some other ones coming soon, hopefully too, that I'm working on. But that one's like done and actually in process or whatever. Reflex Dog Training says, does anyone know a good masking tape for pouring resin directly onto bases so it doesn't spill over? I've seen people use polystyrene sheets, but I was wondering if there was a tape instead. Like round bases? Oof. Yeah, not that I know of. Because the thing about masking tape is it's kind of bendy, so yeah, I don't know how you'd do that. Like I said, I've not had great luck with resin myself. I mean, I've only ever used it mainly for like making a puddle. But like when you see those cool display bases where it's like the water just stops in midair, you can see stuff inside there. That's a crazy black magic art that I'm not good at. So, ooh, one thing I also forgot that I mentioned that I did buy at Nova is I bought a bunch of water slide decals from a company called Fallout Hobbies, and I want to. It's like a New Year's resolution, except it's not New Year's because it's like September. I want to get better at water slide decals, transfers, whatever you want to call them. I sort of stink at them. I can put them on a flat surface. That's not hard. That's easy. Anybody should be able to do that. I want to get better at putting them on curvy bits. So I bought some transfers from them, and I'm going to be getting some microset and microsol, which are kind of like the main thing you need to make them work better that way. So yeah, that's on its way. That hopefully me getting better at it is the plan. VJ Morph says, I've got analysis paralysis for painting my Skaven army. Thoughts or suggestions? I would start with a brown primer if you can, like a dark brown or medium brown even maybe. And then I would, like, in a perfect world, medium brown primer, dark brown wash, medium brown dry brush, and then a light brown dry brush on top of that, but just grow the parts that would be hit from above with a light, and then start doing the details. I've got a Blood Bowl team of Skaven that I did basically the same way. They're not finished. Like, detail parts haven't got finished, but the fur is all cool. So, yeah. Matthew Steers put a link to the Teespring. Yes. So, if you're interested, you can go here, bit.ly/merchbunker, and see the current 5 designs, but new one will be coming soon. So, that'll be cool. Yes. Let's see, what else? All that stuff helps support the channel and all that kind of stuff. Plus, you get a cool shirt, hopefully. So, Mike G says, I have a chance to buy a whole bunch of GW Wood Elves for cheap. Never been a huge Wood Elf fan, but it is really calling to me. Are Wood Elves even used in AOS? Or is it all Wet Elves and Tree Dudes? Wood Elves work well with the Tree Dudes. So you could easily build an army and mix those two together. Yeah, so there's definitely, you could still run elves, certainly. There's not, I don't think, anything new for them out there, but they do have war scrolls and stuff like that. And if you mix them in with the Sylvaneth, the tree folks, they work nicely together. They can have an alliance and stuff like that and work out real nicely. So, yeah. Well, let me see. Someone just asked a question, and I need to look some stuff up real quick. Let's see here. That's not what I wanted to type in. Oh, well, that's weird. Why'd that work? Oh, I bet I know why. It's because Teespring's kind of fools. Cool. All right. Well, yeah. So if so, it's not in the store yet, but you can evidently. Yeah. Well, I can fix that later. Never mind. Yeah. So anyway, it'll be coming soon, and that'll be fine. And I'll fix some things after the show because I don't want. Yeah. There you go. Okay. Where was I? Sorry. Wet blending is good for small area detail, says the Animaster. I mean, it's good for large areas too. Honestly, I find it a little bit. I mean, it's easier to do sometimes in small areas because it's just easier to see if it's not working properly. Like you can, yeah. But if it's in big areas, I still practice. Like if I'm painting a shield, I always like try to do some wet blending in there because it seems like it should be better to do. Microsolid Microset, says Devin. It's the only option. Yep, as everyone's been saying that. Yep, definitely. Let's see here. Adron says that Darren Lathan has a YouTube channel with a really good, nice guide on doing decals. If someone's going to do a really good guide on decals, I'm going to suspect it's Darren. Darren works for GW. He's very good. Yeah, definitely. Let's see here. Setting solutions are essential for a good decal application, especially if they lie over details. Yeah, that's the hard part, is getting it over like the bumpy bits, and those are the directions I'm going to be trying to go. Let's see here. What else? Is there any difference between GW/Army Painter and hardware store rattle can primer? I mean, maybe. Honestly, I don't ever use GW rattle can primer. I've heard really good things about the Retributor Gold, but the other ones they're so expensive. I generally personally use either Krylon camouflage colors because I really like those. Sometimes I go to the auto parts store and use sandable auto primer like black or white, or even sometimes red oxide depending on the model. That's a really good kind of primer you can use. The Army Painter ones I like well enough. They come in tons of different colors, which is also a lot of fun, so that's good. I think the Wood Elves, says John Ashley Smith, are now part of the Wanderers. Does that sound right? Yeah, I think they've kind of started calling them Wanderers now, but they can be still, from what I understand, I've got a friend who plays Sylvaneth, and he's been looking at a bunch of the Wood Elf stuff because he wants to try to expand his army. So you could do that, yeah. Leon Ralstone says, don't use tap water when mixing metallics. I've found 90% distilled and 10% alcohol works wonders and the paint doesn't separate as much. I've never tried that. Generally, honestly, these days for my metallics, I just go with airbrush paints. I just brush them on though, but I use a Vallejo airbrush metallics. They're spectacular. Normal like GW metallics for me, unless I'm dry brushing, are just way too thick and they just don't work out for me as well. So yeah, that's kind of a thing. But the normal, but yeah, if you use the airbrush metallic colors and I brush them on from Vallejo, they're really nice. Really happy with them. Like Model Color Air metallic from Vallejo, chrome. It's like a one coat, super thin, really opaque, super shiny. It's not like a mirror, you can't see yourself in it, but it's really, really nice. It's one of my favorites. Emily says that Wood Elves may be making a comeback based on pending Underworld's release, and they have a football release. Either that or a reimagining. Yeah, I could definitely see them, Wood Elves, coming back. I mean, there's not been a lot of elfness other than Wet Elves and kind of Snake Elves, whatever. I don't know. This Daughters of Cain, are those elves? I don't know. Anyway, there's been that stuff, but yeah, they do need to bring back some Wood Elves. That's kind of a staple, I would think, at least in my opinion. The Animaster says, yeah, I made the stupid mistake of getting Chaos Black Primer. For the price I paid, it was not worth it. I have also been told, and I don't know that this is completely true, but I have been told that the longer that primer sits on the shelf, the lousier it gets. So if it's a primer that's been sitting on the shelf at the game store for a long time, whereas like at the hardware store, they replenish a lot more recently because people buy more, but at the hobby store, it may not go as quickly. If it's been sitting around for a while, spray primer can go not good. Like, I have used spray primers before that have been sitting in my garage, which is a terrible place if you live in Wisconsin specifically. You should not never keep your rattle cans in the garage, because then, like, over the winter they freeze and then they get thawed out again. And, ugh. Anyway, but I've used a primer where I'm like, oh, this will probably be fine, and then spray it on the model. And not only does it look dusty, but it is dusty. And you can take a brush and just dust it off, and it just comes off mostly. That's bad. That's bad primer, so don't use that. Benefit, you can just basically go and blow most of the primer off, so you don't have to worry about stripping it. But, yeah, definitely. JP Got Rocket says, if you paint PVC figures, stay away from the cheap spray paint from Walmart. They stay sticky. I'm trying to remember what I used on my Reaper Bones. I either used Rattle Can from Krylon, the camouflage stuff, or else I used Airbrush primer. One of the two, but I have painted bone stuff in the past, and I've used that stuff, so yeah. Devin Jones says, took your suggestion for the camo primers for a long time. Still use it for 3D prints. Now for minis, it's all airbrush. Vallejo primers have so many options that you can zenithal in most colors. Absolutely. One of the big things I teach in that How to Cut Corners class that I taught at Nova last week was that you should always try to use a colored primer. Like, if you're trying to do like a zenithal highlight, then black and white, sure, and then start using your glazes and stuff like that. But if you are like, I need to paint a whole bunch of Blood Angels, if you prime them black or if you prime them white, and different people will say different things. Oh, you should only ever do that because you want them to be bright. You should prime them in white and then paint them red. Other people will say, yeah, but you want the shadows to be kind of nice and dark, so you want to paint, prime them black and then paint them red. I would tell you to prime them red, because that saves you a step at the very least, because you're not having to like prime and then base color. You're just priming and base coloring in one thing. So get yourself a good red color from Rattle Can, let's say, from the Army Painter, or get a good red primer for your airbrush from Vallejo, or Stynylrez, Badger. They make airbrush primers as well. In the example I gave in the class, I primed the models actually at first with dark brown camouflage color from Krylon, and then I hit from above with pure red from the Army Painter. And what that does is that it causes the shadows to get dark, and then the highlights, for the parts where the paint hits when you spray from above and just sort of spritz around, those parts turn red, and then it can give you a darker looking model. But if you kind of plan for it, that's what you want, and it makes it again look blended, even though you just use 2 rattle cans instead of getting fancy with your brush. So that's something to think about as well. But yeah, I rarely ever. The only time I ever prime stuff black or white these days is, well, if I'm painting Stormtroopers, I'm priming them white. If I'm painting Death Watch, I'm priming them black. Or if I'm doing like a Zenithal highlight, where I would go prime black and then white, and then do most of the painting in glazes, then I'll do that. But otherwise, I don't ever prime in black and white anymore. If it's just like, oh, I'm going to prime this in black and then paint it blue. Well, why wouldn't I just prime it in blue? You know what I mean? It just makes a lot of sense. Monkey Man, 1, 2, 5, 3, 4. That throws off a little bit of. I don't have a lot of OCD, but just to put the 5 in the middle there, that throws me off just a touch. I'm just going to say that. First time live. Much love from Iowa. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Monkey Man. 1253-4. Christopher says, Vallejo has the metal color line, and they are the best metallics I've ever used. They're geared to be used through an airbrush, but they brush on great as well. Yes, they do. They do. They are really, really good. John Ashley Smith says, my garage is my hobby room. Pretty much everything stays out here all year except for spray cans. I try to keep them indoors at room temperature. Yeah, spray cans are super dependent upon the temperature. That's a big deal. Yeah. Let's see here. Dr. Robert Kelso says, I use Citadel Rattle Can primers always. I've enjoyed the fineness for minis. I use hardware primers for terrain work. I use thicker paints for terrain work as well. Like, I'll use, stuff from the hardware store, which I still find in certain situations still work okay on minis, but I definitely use thicker primers on terrain, because terrain's going to take more of a beating than over time than the models will generally. You're like a little bit more careful with your models than you are with your terrain. And then I have a tendency to do a bunch of the painting on the terrain sometimes with those cheap craft paints that you can get, those cheap craft acrylics that you can get from like Walmart, Michaels, Hobby Lobby, that kind of stuff. They come in tubes, not tubes, well, sort of tubes, cylinders about yay high, and the little pop top, like that. They make that noise, and that stuff is pretty thick. But for dry brushing, it's super great. It works really well, and for even just like straight on. But generally, again, I try to prime it very close to the color I want the majority of the model to be. And if you're talking about terrain, I will generally prime in like a dark gray if I can, and then dry brush a bunch of light gray and then some white. Do a little bit of layering that way. But yeah, it works out pretty well. Roy says, I'm thinking about getting into Gaslands. Do I really only need the book, or is there a must-have accessory I should get, like the dice and such? The dice are useful, but they're not a requirement. Basically, other than the book and the cards, there's nothing really required. Like, you want to have a place to play, you want to have some terrain, but you can kind of build that from scratch. There are also templates that they have in the book that you can either photocopy, or you might be able to get them from their website and then give them as a PDF, and then rather than try to photocopy your book. And you can cut those onto like cardstock or whatever. If you go onto Etsy, there are plenty of people who are selling the dice. They're selling the templates cut out of like either MDF or acrylic or whatever. But you could get those later on down the road. You could start out with cardboard and like normal dice, and then move up as you start to play it more, and you and your friends are interested in it more. Then you can kind of accelerate from there and buy some of that stuff. So yeah. Kevin Fowler says, do you have any advice for airbrushing varnishes? The only varnish that I use for my airbrush these days is made by a company called AK Interactive, and it's called Ultra Matte Varnish, and I love it to bits. It's super good. Like, I use it on everything. Because I always want everything to be matte varnish, unless, like, if it needs to be wet or gross, then I will still usually do the matte varnish and then go back and touch up the areas with like a gloss brush on, like a, what do they call it? GW makes it, it's called Ard Coat, I think it's what it's called, and that's a glossy brush on varnish. So like if you're doing like a Plague Marine, a lot of the Plague Marine is done in matte, but then any of the parts where there's sores and tentacles and weird crap going on, then you go back and touch that up in a glossy to make it look like it's wet. But otherwise, I use that matte varnish, that AK Interactive Ultimate Matte Varnish on everything, because it works so well. I used to be all about Tester's Dull Coat, but I feel as if they've changed the formula recently, and it is not as matte as it used to be. So it's kind of a bummer, but there it is. I gotta wipe my nose. I apologize. So yeah, that's the AK Interactive stuff is awesome. It's kind of hard to find, but it is. Excuse me. But it is damn good stuff. Let's see here. Darren Walker says, Adam, did you see those new undead models GW had up yesterday? No, I'll have to take a look. I did not. I was, like I said, I was basically on the couch most of the day. A. Wallach asks, when airbrushing, do you use respirator? If so, what type? I do. I've been told that I'm wasting my time a little bit because I have a beard, like some sort of weird hippie, and so it doesn't work. But, yeah. Honestly, if you are using normal acrylic paints with an air compressor, you generally only need, from what I've been told by a couple of smart heads, you really could get away just with one of those paper, the ones that have the little metal thing up here to press on your nose, and they have the elastic goes behind your head. Because what you're really trying to stop from getting into your lungs is the paint dust that's floating around, the particulate. If you are using a rattle can, well then, and you're doing it in the house, which you ought not to do in my opinion, then you are trying to stop not only the particulate from getting into your lungs, but you're also trying to stop the propellant, the fumes from the propellant from getting into your lungs, and that's way tougher, and you need a much more powerful mask. You need one of those masks that's all like rubber and has the two things out here, and I don't even know what they're called, but yeah, that's more important. I have the rubber thing with the two things and several straps behind the head and all that kind of stuff that I got at like Harbor Freight, and I just use that when I'm airbrushing, just because it just makes sense. Because I don't have the paper thing, so I just use that. But it was relatively inexpensive at Harbor Freight. But again, I don't rattle can in the house. So when you're using compressed air, from an air compressor, the air is not dangerous to you because it's the air that was already in your house anyway. It's the particulate matter that you want to keep out of your lungs. So that's basically the most important thing. The Animaster says, does airbrush varnish ruin your airbrush? How do you clean your airbrush after varnishing? I clean it the same way that I clean my clean it after painting. I do have two airbrushes. I have a more expensive one, which is my Iwata Eclipse HP-CS, and that's the one that I do the majority of my painting with. And then I have a cheaper Iwata Neo that I use for varnishing. It's probably not necessary to have two brushes. I have goofed up before, and you put varnish in my good airbrush, and it doesn't really matter. But I do it that way just to keep them separate anyway. That all being said, the best way to clean your airbrush, and I've said this a bunch of times, is to never let it get dry. So when I get done painting, I put some airbrush cleaner. I use Iwata airbrush cleaner, which I got online, in like a big honking bottle. But you can use all kinds of different stuff. Some people use Windex, some people whatever. So you pour some cleaner in there, and then I spray it. Spray it. And I have this little jar that has a hole in the top designed for an airbrush, and then there's like a filter on the back, and so you just spray in there, and then eventually you have to dump the jar out. But you just spray that stuff through. Then I throw in some distilled water, spray that stuff through, and then I take the brush apart, turn off the compressor, all that jazz, and then I put the main body of the brush and then the two nozzles in the front. There's like a little nozzle on the inside and a bigger nozzle that goes over it. Oh, and there's also usually like a little cap at the very end. I put all those parts into an ultrasonic cleaner, which has got a mixture of distilled water and some, again, more of the cleaning fluid that I use from Iwata. And I just push the button and it runs for 3 minutes. And I leave that brush in there until the next time that I paint. And then I take it out and then put it all together and start painting. So it's always sitting in fluid. Now people will say, oh, that'll ruin your airbrush. I've had this brush for at least 8 years, if not longer. And it's fine. So, because it's a good brass brush, it's got a chrome on the outside. Where the cup goes and attaches to the main body of it, there must be some very fine welding or something going on there. I can see just the tiniest bit of brass in between those two parts, so some of the chrome might have come off in just that one spot, but otherwise it's been fine. I have no problems with it. So I've never had a clogged brush in my life because my brush never gets dry. So when your brush gets dry, the paint that might be trapped inside can get dry. If the brush never gets dry, the paint never gets dry. That's just the way it works. And same with the varnish. Let's see here. Devin says, based on Vince Venturella, who's a friend of the show, I now varnish multiple times with AK Interactive in between steps of painting. Huge benefit. Now when I make a mistake, if I rapidly get a wet brush to it, I can normally remove the mistake. That is a benefit of doing multiple, like doing varnishes in between things. Definitely, like, sometimes there's times when you want to lock down the work you've done, and then you know that the next step might be a mess or might be, whatever. Like, maybe, basically, if you're ever going to, like, if you've painted everything, but now you want to start doing some washes, but with oil paints instead of regular acrylic paints, you absolutely want to, in that situation, very frequently, gloss varnish everything, because you want the oil paints to run the gloss a little bit more if you're doing a oil wash. But, that kind of stuff is really kind of the way to go. But you definitely need to protect the acrylic from the oil because the stuff that's in the oil will eat the acrylic. So that's why you put a layer of gloss in between there. But you can also do the same type of thing for with the matte varnish as well for certain steps. And yeah, you're right. If you're going to be like, if you do that and then you go to do something and you're like, oh, I goofed that up. If it's still wet, you can easily kind of scrub it away and get rid of it without ruining the paint underneath because you've got a nice layer of varnish there. So yeah. Let's see here. VJ Morph says, I use the paper masks and a small booth. Yeah, I don't have one of those booths. If you have one of those booths, like, those are super nice. Like, when I first started getting into airbrushing, like, airbrush booths cost like $300 to $400. You were like, whoa. Now you can go on Amazon and get a nice one. Like, it's not huge, but it's nice and it works really well for like $100. So, if I was in a position where I have this weird little room underneath the stairs, kind of like where Harry Potter would live, and that's where I airbrush. So if it gets dusty with paint residue all over the place that floating around in the air and settling on things, that's okay. because I can eventually, like once every year, just go through and just kind of wipe everything down. But if I was trying to do it like someplace like in the living room or the dining room or something like that, then in those situations you would definitely want something to suck up that paint particulate. If you are also concerned about paint particulate getting in your lungs, even if you are in your own little self-contained room, the vent, that hood will suck up a lot of it so that your mask won't have to work as hard or whatever. But yeah, it's up to you. A lot of those also, like the one that my friend Matt at work just recently got, also comes with a Lazy Susan, one of those little round things you can spin stuff around on, which is really super helpful as well for airbrushing, like on a big thing where you want to like airbrush and then just spin it and spin it and then airbrush and spin it and airbrush, especially for like varnishes and things like that. I just went to the hobby store and bought one of those things for decorating cakes. It's basically the same type of thing. It's just raised up a little bit, and you put a cake on it, and then you would start spinning and like I don't know, doing cake stuff, I don't know, whatever. But it works really well for airbrush as well. So anyway, I'm gonna go try to blow my nose. Whenever I do, I plug both ears and frequently make a mess. So that's why I'm not doing it here on the show. But I appreciate you folks coming by and listening to me not being able to talk very well, and I'm glad you got a bunch of questions. And those of you who I got to see at Nova Open, I was glad to meet you, and those of you who I've seen before and been friends with, and it was good to see you again. And for those of you, hopefully I'll see you at a convention someday soon, and we'll be able to hang out a bit and talk and that kind of stuff. But yeah, so we'll be this show will be back in 2 weeks, and I don't travel again until October for Dragonfall, but I don't know if that's going to mess with the show. I got to double check on that. And yeah, so and then like I said, 21st of September, Saturday, 4 p.m. Central, roughly, I will be on Sam's Twitch, and we'll be having a good time. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, so I got things going on, everything. So I hope to talk to you folks again soon, and I'll keep making the videos on Fridays, and you'll keep seeing them, hopefully. And we'll see you next time. And I'm going to try to get better. Thanks for watching.